So let's begin our interview. Mr. Case, hello. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for taking the time for us. And hello to every of our viewers. Our today guest is one of the main speakers of ICO event London, Andrew Keys. Mr. Keys drives enterprise business development strategy for ConsenSys and co-founded ConsenSys Enterprise to create Ethereum blockchain solutions for Fortune 500 companies and governments. Hello, Mr. Case. Thank you for joining us. And let's shortly move to the first question. So the first question is, please tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. How did you dive into your work with blockchain initially?
Well, Ivan, thanks for having me on this. I look forward to meeting with you and your colleagues and the other attendees of the event next week. Um, my background has been at the intersection of technology and finance. I grew up on Wall Street, worked at UBS investment banking. I worked at a fund owned by Goldman Sachs. I also co-founded a revenue cycle management company where I learned about kind of database technologies and the integration of payment systems. Uh, I met Joseph Lubin, who was one of the 8 Ethereum co-founders very early in the evolution of the Ethereum protocol and drove the global business development of ConsenSys. ConsenSys is close to 400 people, and we are distributed and decentralized across over 25 countries. We have offices in New York, London, Dubai, Singapore, Johannesburg, South Africa, San Francisco, Toronto, Romania, India, Chile, and essentially we operate across 4 pillars. Uh, and the 4 pillars, the first one is full stack product development. So we maintained 3 of the 8 implementations of the Ethereum protocol. We maintain the Java client, the Haskell client, and the .NET client. Next, we build developer tools. So we build the most downloaded Ethereum developer tool to create Solidity-based smart contracts, which is called Truffle. We've created Infura, which handles 1 billion requests a day, which is essentially the Akamai for blockchains. And then we build on top of that applications. So we've created the balanced triple entry accounting system. We've created many types of financial instruments, and we build lots of different Ethereum-based applications. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is enterprise consulting. So we teach businesses and governments what blockchain technology is. So some of our clients include Santander, British Petroleum, Procter and Gamble, Microsoft, the Emirate of Dubai, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and basically we elucidate use cases, escalate those from proof of concept into pilots, and then eventually build out production grade environments employing Ethereum blockchain technology. Third, we have ConsenSys Academy for developers, attorneys, project managers, MBAs who are interested in deploying this type of technology. We have educational classes and testing, and in many instances, if they pass our ConsenSys Academy exam, we will employ people to build out these applications. And lastly is ConsenSys Capital, which is an umbrella of services. One is traditional venture capital. The second is asset management. And the third is token launch services, which we can discuss later.
Wow, it's an extremely wide range of action, and I'm really, truly impressed. Thank you for this answer. So, if you if you like, let's move to the next question. It's
Great.
about your co-creation of
Yep.
Ethereum blockchain as a service with Microsoft Azure, and as well you catalyzed the creation of Enterprise Ethereum Alliance.
Yep.
So
Yep.
please tell us
Sure.
briefly about the
Sure.
background of these two
Sure.
projects and how did you
Sure.
crystallize the ideas?
Sure. So thanks for that question, Ivan. So long story short, about 3 years ago, just after the Genesis block was created of Ethereum, I reached out to the Microsoft Azure team and really told them that I believed that many companies around the world were going to want to build out applications and specifically proofs of concepts in a permissioned environment where they wouldn't have to worry about essentially using Ether or testing. They wanted to do that in kind of a controlled environment. So we created the Ethereum blockchain as a service offering on top of Azure, where ConsenSys companies would deploy permissioned blockchains on top of Azure, and then after that, we also embedded the Ethereum code base, which is named Solidity, into Microsoft Visual Studio. So it would make it very easy for developers around the world to deploy smart contract-based applications in the Azure permissioned cloud environment. And my belief is that this is a great interim step, that while Ethereum is maturing, we're kind of working on intranets, and the Microsoft blockchain as a service has served people very well. I think there are thousands of projects now that are working on top of that offering. With respect to the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, it is the largest open source blockchain consortium on Earth. There are something over 200 plus companies. Some of those companies include British Petroleum, Accenture, UBS, JP Morgan, Santander, Deloitte, and many others. I just don't have the information in front of me. And basically, there are two layers to the EEA stack. There's a protocol layer where we're working on an enterprise-grade version of Ethereum that has really three main focuses. The first is configurable consensus, so the ability to swap out consensus algorithms depending upon which environment you are in. So you can have PBFT, Raft, you could swap into proof of stake. Next is what's called roles-based access control, or auth-auth permissioning. And lastly is the evolution of privacy, most notably using ZK snarks and or potential hardware like Intel SGX for encryption. And then the other layer to the EEA stack is the application layer. So while this reference architecture for the enterprise flavor of Ethereum's protocol is being finalized, we've created user groups in many different verticals. So there's a supply chain user group, a banking user group, a digital identity user group, advertising technology user group, energy user group, healthcare user group, and different players in those respective verticals can work in those application layer user groups and build proofs of concepts that can scale into production environments.
Wow, it's really impressive. It's like one of a kind project like for full stack development of any kind of projects. It's really impressive. Thank you for this answer.
No problem.
So you told us told us briefly about the ConsenSys, and
Yeah.
Could you please tell us about your personal mission in the ConsenSys?
Yeah. So I've driven a lot of the global business development. I worked on that Microsoft offering, and now most recently I'm helping drive ConsenSys Capital, which really is offering financial services that revolve around this ecosystem. So the ability for pension funds to potentially buy digital assets, the ability to custody digital assets, so custody 2.0, the real-time gross settlement of assets, whether it's for corporate treasury or for institutional and central banks to essentially digitize their assets.
Okay, it's it's really cool. Thanks for that. Thanks for that questions.
No problem.
For that answer. I'm sorry. Worrying a bit. So let's move to the next question, like a more common question,
Yeah.
question about the industry and
Yeah.
how do you think at what stage of a new technology
Yeah.
revolution we are now, and
Sure.
can we name the blockchain application to every kind of services the new technology revolution?
Sure. In my brief, simple overview, what I think this technology is essentially paving way for is the next generation of the database and the next generation of the internet. In terms of timing, where we are, some people may say we're in the equivalent of the internet's 1970s. I think we're probably closer to the early 90s. And right now, what I'm seeing is that many large enterprises are building permissioned blockchain applications. So it's similar to what's gone on where we created a permissioned version of Ethereum on Azure. And the reason why, and I would analogize that to the intranet, so kind of like private instantiations, because really what we've found is that the internet, 2.0, or in my opinion, public Ethereum, isn't yet ready yet. And the public Ethereum protocol has a scalability and privacy roadmap, and there are 4 main upgrades to that roadmap, and we've already accomplished 2 of those upgrades, and the 3rd upgrade is actually starting to happen October 16th, and that's called Metropolis. In Metropolis, we will be adding ZK Snarks, which is a privacy upgrade to the system. And then we will also have kind of multiple scalability upgrades. So one is the inclusion of state channels onto the public Ethereum mainnet. 2 is the transition from proof of work to proof of stake, where we essentially go from mining to virtual mining. 3 is what's called sharding, where a shard of the blockchain database has to form consensus rather than all of the nodes in the environment forming consensus. And if we have that privacy upgrade and that scalability upgrade, I believe the transaction layer of Web 3.0 will be complete. Then I think we really have 4 more complementary technologies that we have to work on to have that full-fledged Web 3.0. The second one is decentralized data storage. The 2 main candidates for that are Filecoin, or the interplanetary file system, or the Ethereum version, which is called Swarm. Next would be decentralized compute. Golem has been leading the way in that regard. And then lastly, decentralized messaging or decentralized chat. So something like Signal or matrix.org is one that I think is very interesting, where we could basically replicate having the efficiencies of a Google chat or a Skype, but in a decentralized peer-to-peer manner.
Well, thank you very much. So what we are looking forward is a team, a company that have instruments and will to drive the revolutions forward, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, pre-last question, about the main
Yep.
topic of recent months, ICOs.
Yes.
Obviously, ICOs. So
Yes.
nowadays it seems normal if any casual person on the street knows the concept of ICO. And what do you think? How jurisdictions should behave on making rules for such a young market? Should they prohibit, approve, or regulate ICOs? And if regulate, how should they regulate it?
Okay. So what I think we're witnessing right now is the realization that we can now digitize any asset. And what I mean by that is that you are in the not so distant future, there will be natively digital representations of US dollars, British pounds, Singaporean dollars, Hong Kong dollars, uh, oil. Barrels of oil will be digitized. Bushels of hay will be digitized. Loyalty points will be digitized. Equity in companies will be digitized. Um, Beyonce concert tickets, the asset of a concert ticket will be digitized. And then what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to move these assets as easily as you send an email today. What we're seeing is, rather than kind of the internet being a matter of communication, it now will evolve into a matter of asset transfer. Now, with respect specifically to the sale of tokens, we're in somewhat of a wild, wild west. And I think similar to the late 90s, early 2000s boom and bust of the internet, there will be lots of companies that fail. And I think there will be lots of tokens that fail. And I believe that there will be lots of tokens that will probably not be launched properly. Because if they're issuing what would be considered security and they're not registering with the Financial Conduct Authority in London or the SEC in the US, for example, as jurisdictions, they will be essentially breaking the law. What we're seeing now is the recognition of various legal precedent, including the Howey test, which will help give guidance on how to properly natively digitally issue tokens. And I think that it's very important for anybody considering to do that in this space to have proper guidance in doing so.
Okay, thank you very much. So, in common, to finalize that, it's no way back right now from the tokenization of all assets, all kind of assets, as like the recent time.
Yes.
Yeah. So, let's move to the last question. The last one is about your speech at the ICO event London that will be held
Yep.
on the 11th of October. Please tell us
Sure.
briefly what are you looking to tell us
Yep.
about and want people to expect.
So what I'll be speaking about is I will be giving an update on what ConsenSys has been doing in the ecosystem, uh, and specifically talking about the ConsenSys Capital Financial Services. We most recently launched our venture side, ConsenSys Capital Ventures. We have ConsenSys Capital Asset Management that will be launching shortly, and we're also providing ConsenSys Capital token launch services. So if a company is interested in potentially launching a token, we have essentially a methodology by which we believe is a safe, legal, and responsible way to do so.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Really, really looking forward to hear it, to speak with you in person, and all the things. So thank you very much for having us. Thank you to all of our viewers for watching this interview, and see you soon at ICO event London.
Thank you. I look forward to coming to the event next week.